we don't really hear the struggles they have. And I think it's our job to really bring all those unheard perspectives and put it in, and help the viewer make sense of all the information that's out there. Yeah, so but it really depends on the genre and the type of film you're making, and if it's a protagonist-driven show, it's very different from a very factual kind of documentary.
Okay, that's a nice reflection. Okay, my second question essentially is a bit of an elephant in the room, and I'll declare my hand as a Western libertarian, and of course the West has enormous amounts of libertarian issues, but Singapore has a special relationship with censorship. And I was looking at the Reporters Without Borders yearly index for world press freedom, and Finland is number 1, UK comes in 38, America 41, Indonesia, this is rankings of 180 countries, but Indonesia is 130, Philippines 138, Malaysia 146, Russia 148.
How many countries are there?
200, oh well, Singapore is 154. So they give a little rationale for this placing. The MDA, Media Development Authority, censors journalistic content. The government agency has ordered closure of the Real Singapore news website. 2 of the contributors were accused of sedition, and there is regular occurrence.
Is there democracy in Singapore? That's what you're asking.
Well, my question is, as journalists, how do you feel? Do you agree that there's a problem? But what I'm interested in are the mechanisms of censorship, because is it essentially self-censorship within media court, or is there some bogeyman, some mysterious man?
Okay. So I think it's a bit of everything. Over time we've evolved. I mean, I studied overseas, I came back with this idealism. How can Singapore democracy be this way? How can we do things like that? And then I realized things work a certain way here for certain reasons. Singapore is very unique in that respect. We are not, the media is not the third, is not the watchdog there to pounce on politicians and not, to hold people accountable. That's not our role here. I think our role really is to sort of disseminate information to help people understand what is happening out there. Yes, do we do propaganda? We do. Propaganda is not a bad word, actually. The negative connotation is something we give to it. But propaganda just means getting information out there, letting you know what's happening. A lot of times we do support the government in getting the word out. Do we have the right to challenge the government? Yes, we do. Do we want to air it out here all the time? No. A lot of times we have these discussions, maybe behind closed doors. We do talk to our politicians, we say, have you thought about this, about that? They do listen. We have discussions. They have a lot of discussions in Parliament, and many views are shared, but very often they're not shared with everyone, so you don't get to see all of it. So it seems that we don't have that sense of freedom. Sure, could we have more freedom? Yeah, but do you want to be like the US? I mean, I'm sorry, but that is just the other extreme of end of the stick, So it's different for every country. We cannot take one measurement that is used in another country and apply it to this country and say, how come you're not like that? So I think Singapore is unique that way. In terms of the rankings, you can be, well, I'm a bit skeptical. Any survey can say you are 1 or 10, depending on the criteria of measurement, what they use to measure. So, university, where do you stand? I've just been told in one survey, NUS is higher ranked than Yale. Yeah, what's the criteria for measurement? I don't know. So it depends on which one you want to subscribe to. You can say, just like radio stations, Class 95 is the #1 English station in the country. Again, yes, Kiss 92 also makes that claim depending on which age group, which demographic, at what peak hour, blah, 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 blah. So I did come back and think, yes, we feel very restricted, but actually, for me, in my opinion, a lot of the things that happen are fine, because within the things that Singapore bans and doesn't allow, and are things which generally most of us don't want. We have this white picket fence, yeah, but generally what's outside is what most of us don't want anyway. Could we have more freedom? Yeah, but is it really necessary? I don't know, I'm kind of cool with it. So, what do you guys think?
No censorship.
I think when talking about censorship, it's also important to think about whether the people who are creating the content really feel censored. And as a young journalist, I can say that, with a lot of information, I have never felt the censorship. And I've been able to produce a lot of content that I've been wanting to produce. But also, it's related to the fact that I don't want to, as he said, I don't want to be the watchdog of politicians. I have no interest in that. And a lot of my colleagues in the newsroom also don't pursue stories like that. So I think, in part, I think it's also got to do with the culture of the media in Singapore. For some reason, there just isn't that, that desire to want to do that sort of reporting. Maybe she has a different.
I have many experiences with censorship, and I would say there is definitely censorship in our media, and I went through, in a way, a long struggle with it before I came to terms with the way things are run. So I had a very different experience from Shushan. I remember when I first started, I was pretty idealistic, and there were a lot of stories I wanted to cover. And there was one critical point where I just broke down and I cried, and I felt like that was the point, even now. That was the point I kind of lost trust in the profession. It was a foreign worker story, and I remember the foreign worker was telling me, he said, sister, you need to get this story out because it's very important and blah, blah, blah. And that story was heavily censored, and a lot of experts' soundbite were taken out. And I was very, very sad.
It's a raw issue.
I think.
And, so there's a lot more to that. So that was one of the bigger cases, and there were other issues, with taxi driver stories. For example, I interviewed this female taxi driver, and then she cried when I interviewed her, talking about her experience driving and how she was being mistreated by passengers and stuff. And the part where she was crying was taken out because somebody said, we shouldn't put that in because first of all, she's female and she's not representative of taxi drivers in Singapore. And second, it's going to reinforce stereotypes about female taxi drivers and they're weak and they're this and that, which I didn't agree with. And this argument about how it reinforces stereotypes came up a few times in other areas as well. And in my opinion, I feel that as journalists, it's our job to put it out there. And of course, for some people, it would reinforce stereotypes, but for others, it might bring in a new perspective and allow them to see something they never considered before. And of course, we can't control, people's reactions. There will always be people who will choose to hold on to their stereotypes. And when you talk about self-censorship, yes, that happens as well, because after a while, I kind of got tired of fighting with my bosses about what should go in and what shouldn't, and it was very, very tiring, and I didn't, after a while, I really didn't want to do any story that I felt would not be covered well because of censorship, and I avoided those topics if I knew they were going to be problematic, because I felt it wouldn't do justice to the story. So I started to I chose stories that I felt would be covered well, because I feel that as a journalist, I have a responsibility that was given to me by the people who have shared their stories to me, and it takes trust. They're telling me sometimes very intimate stories, and they trusted a stranger with a story, and I felt that I needed to give justice to it. So sometimes when I know that it's going to be problematic, it's not going to pass through, I would rather not.
Let me just add on to that. I think Vivian's brought a very good point. Sure, we all have times when we've come across stories that we really wanted to do and we felt that it wasn't portrayed the way we felt it should be. I'm not saying taking either side, but you also have to take consideration. Sometimes the boss at the time may be thinking, we need a balanced story. We can't send out stories that only show one side of the coin. So we have to bear that in mind. And sometimes we avoid using very emotional content because it does sway people in a certain direction. I'm not saying, I don't know the entire scenario, the context of it, all those things. Maybe at that time, something had just happened in the country. So it's bearing in mind, sometimes, you may not see it, but what's happened in the country, the national agenda, also plays a part in what is coming out. Is that censorship? Yeah, it is. Is it right? Is it wrong? I don't know. Is it appropriate for the time? Maybe, maybe not. If I had showed that and it caused a riot somewhere, should I still have showed that clip? Or should I have not showed that clip? And that's a totally different debate, because it takes censorship to a different level. So Singapore's unique in the sense that because we're so small, so many things are controlled very tightly. And I think for good reason. Whether it's good or bad, I can't tell you what it is. Does someone call up and say, take that off air? Sometimes it does. And believe it or not, it may not be a politician. It can just be a viewer saying, I felt very offended by that. So it can be any of you calling to react to any of this. It doesn't have to be somebody up there. There is no somebody. There are many somebodies. And is there self-censorship? Yes. I think we all do that as well. So, yeah, okay, we won't, I mean, we can go.
And I just want to put in a caveat. It doesn't mean that we are just being very safe, because we do stories. Like recently I did this documentary called Regardless of Race, which for me was really towing the line about what we can talk about, and that's for me a big step forward. And a lot of people may criticize it and say, we're still not talking about XYZ, but the fact that the documentary got out in the first place, which half the time we're wondering whether it would even go on air, that for me was a big step forward. And I think we are always, within the organization doing our best to toe the line and yeah.
If I could just one last word around the of course, since AMSE really brought this out internationally, again, and America, America, read about it, and New Yorker, for instance, said, those of us who in the fourth estate have a duty to spread the word of his ridiculous charges. People like Amos Yee, if they end up the custodians of our profession, the futures of countries like Singapore can be brighter than their past.
Seriously? Well, like Donald Trump.
Okay. Okay.
Sorry, but...
Okay, that is absolutely a fair observation. But my main problem with censorship is actually its effect on creative output. Because what I see is budding young students who want to be filmmakers and writers, and this culture of self-censorship and ultimately censorship of their final works really puts a dampener on the creativity. And quite recently there's this whole debate, is an art scene possible in Singapore? And for me, with degree censorship is the biggest obstacle.
Well, we can't answer on behalf of the government, so I think there's no point, we won't, what we do is what we do, and I think it's within different boundaries. The arts is also quite a different field from the media, so I think we can't bundle it all together. Why don't we take some questions from you guys?
I have something to say to that. I think that censorship should not be an excuse to having no creativity. In fact, censorship being there is an impetus for us to get creative in telling the story in a different way, in a way that is sensitive, that wouldn't get people so offended, and that still get the message out and get people thinking and get So, and it's the same thing, if you look at media, even if it's not censored, so many stories out there have been done, there's so many media organizations worldwide, and now everybody can be a journalist because there's citizen journalism and all that. And we're competing, against so many people for stories, and it's really about how do you get creative to make sure your story is told in a different way, in a way that gets people attention. So I don't think that censorship is necessarily a barrier to creativity. In fact, it forces us to think, given that this censorship law is there, how can we go around it?
All right, it is over to the audience. Be ready.
I'm not going to ask about censorship. I'm Poon K. Wang. I'm the Director of Strategic Planning at the University. I'm also Director of the Economy Center for Innovative Cities. Actually, I really want to focus more on you as journalists, because I think one of the things that you have to do is keep a very close view on the pulse of the ground. Either because you want to bring up different perspectives, either you want to bring a national agenda, or because you think it's an interesting question that needs to be answered, So maybe my question to you is, how do you keep your sense of what is important that needs to be brought out into the open, and for which the media is the appropriate channel to get that out?
in a sense, you're asking how do we keep abreast of what's really happening on the ground, right? I mean, how do we decide?
What should be discussed? Because you have a mass communication channel, so you have access to something that the rest of us we can just talk about, but we're not going to have access to that channel.
Well, the coffee shop talk also happens in the office. So, I mean, we'll have team meetings and we'll throw up all the ideas, look at the issues that are out there. Very often we're reacting to what has kind of already happened, and what people are talking about in the street. And then there's a need to further investigate the issue, to clarify and to find out what are the actual facts. We don't do a lot of crystal ball gazing. I mean, we know certain key events are coming up ahead, but we won't plan and say, I think something might come out of that. Let's work on that. I mean, sure, other things like Olympics and things like that, you will, other big events, but on a day-to-day issue, I think, for example, the show Talking Point I do is very much about what's happening on the ground. But we have no special method. I mean, a lot of times it's just from what we each are reading in different platforms, online, papers, and we hear that, there's the question of special needs, which we feel is not addressed enough. There's not enough awareness on that. Then we may decide as a team to work on that. We did another one about dementia. We've had other topics about like preparing for death. Things which people talk about but not quite talk about. So there's no formula in terms of how we decide what comes out. That's for current affairs. For news, it's really just reacting to whatever is happening on that day itself. You want to add that? Another question? Sure, I think we can hear you.
I'm Sharifah from the Office of Advancement. My first question is, media plays a huge part in influencing the public, especially social media and everything. How do you ensure that whatever's being reported is objective and not skewed, like for example things like the US presidential elections? My second question is, it seems like documentaries like this are becoming very reality TV style, very storytelling kind of angle. What if you go through everything and absolutely nothing happens? Do you feel, like, have you ever felt driven to fabricate a story or force a story?
Maybe I'll just address the one on news first, and you guys can talk about the documentary and the fabrication. Sorry, now I forgot. What was your question again, the first one?
How do you make sure that...
How do we remain objective? For news, it's quite straightforward because we get the information from all the different newswire agencies that come in. So, for example, what's happening in the US, we have our correspondents there. We kind of report on just what is happening. There is no personal input required. When you have an interview with a guest, I mean, we just kind of ask questions that we think everybody else would be wanting to ask. How I feel about Donald Trump, I mean, for example, doesn't play into the scheme of things. It shouldn't. If you can tell that I'm not for him, then I haven't been doing my job effectively. But the same token, I think we are all, as I mentioned earlier, we're never fully, truly neutral and objective because we all have some biases. And that's why there are commentaries. Commentaries are basically for you to air your opinion as whoever, I mean, that's why we always hear about, in the Straits Times, about, I suddenly forgot her name, but she tells us about her whole love life and Sumiko Tan, yeah. That's which is a totally different kind of news, not reporting. But yeah, so that's for news. You want to talk about it? Oh, sorry, you want to add that?
I guess taking it back to a more local issue, if we look at how we reported the general election last year, I think in the digital team at least, there was a lot of effort to ensure that we gave equal coverage to all parties, not just the PAP. And it was actually a KPI, or not even a KPI, it was a necessity to generate reports on how many posts we had for each party and to make sure that it correlated to the size of the party. So, that we take measures, we actually do take measures like that. In terms of writing commentaries on, our own opinions about the different parties, what's all this chatter about?
But do you think there's democracy in Singapore, especially?
Do we think there's democracy?
Yeah.
Why don't we let all of you
What do
answer?
you think?
Yeah.
Democracy in Singapore? Are we a democratic society based on justice?
Are the other parties really given a fair?
Yeah, what do you think? Are the other parties really given a fair show? A fair go at what they need to say? Who says yes? Who says no? Hey.
Everyone's there.
I mean, and that's why she mentioned we make a conscious effort to cover both sides because that is the exact sentiment out there that will say it's been unfair.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
I prefer your defense of propaganda. And propaganda can be done beautifully. It's an art. And isn't it just best to own it? You know, to say there is manipulation, there is bias. We do it well.
But we
Let's
don't.
say it.
So you feel there's bias.
Yes.
Yeah. But we don't feel there's bias. So that's where we differ. So, yeah. I'm sure there's
Well, I think there are measures put in place, especially when it's covering things like local elections, you know, giving equal airtime and all that. But so I've heard a story. This was, I didn't encounter it personally, but my colleague who was preparing those dossiers or like I think presidential election or something, when the candidates are announced, they have to prepare like some sort of maybe 1 minute to introduce, you know, to viewers who are these candidates. And then my colleague was telling me that, you know, one candidate sent it like 2 weeks in advance, because we would write to them and say, hey, we need this information, you know, for blah blah blah. And then the other candidate gave us like the day before, and obviously we have less time to prepare for the candidate that gave us the day before, and it may look a bit more slipshod partly because we have less time. So there are little factors like that. Sometimes it's kind of beyond our control, but I think there are measures we put in place to try to be balanced. But to your point, answering your question about whether it can be objective, I think you should never expect any media organization to be objective. And Channel News Asia, our branding is Channel News Asia. It's giving the Asian perspective. So when it comes to US election, our stories are planned and intentionally meant to look a bit different from if you watch a US coverage or a UK coverage, because when we are briefed to get a story about the US election, we are looking at, you know, what is its impact on Asia, what is US and Japan's bilateral relations, how is it going to change if Trump takes over, and what impact does that have on our security here. So it's going to be a different focus. And in that sense, it's biased. We're giving you a perspective already, and all media organizations does that depending on how it's funded, you know, where its money is coming from. So, I mean, as a viewer, I think you should be cognizant of that. You should look at where a media organization is getting its money, and you should always be reading from a variety of a healthy diet of news, I would say.
That's right. It's very clear the difference between CNN and Fox News, right? You know the difference, right? Each of them are for different parties. So if you watch it knowing that, you have that filter. But let's talk about fabrication. Have you ever been tempted to make up something for a really boring show?
When we look at a documentary, it's something that requires a lot of investment in terms of time, commitment, research, money. So before we would even go in, it's quite unlikely that we would have filmed for 6 months and have nothing, because if we knew that there were nothing, we would have pulled it off at 2 weeks, for example, or 1 week. In fact, for the Don't Get Around show, where it's a 6 months project, we were filming over 6 months, we did a pilot like a 1 week. We just spent 1 week there, no crew, no equipment. The reporters, we just plant ourselves there, observe the classroom, look at the kids, get to know them for 1 week, and decide, you know, okay, you know, could there be a potential story here? Who are the outstanding characters that we can follow? So these are the ways measures we put in to minimize the risk of investing so much and then having nothing coming out of it. I think there have been cases where we have put in money and we threw away an entire story. Even for like Get Real, we paid for the research and stuff, and we realized we can't get access. And when there's no access, there's no story, because there's nobody fronting the show, you know. So we have done that before. As for fabrication, we have never fabricated out of nothing. There needs to be something, you know. So like for Don't Kid Around, we filmed over 6 months, and when you look at one episode, it looks like a ton of things happen in a half an hour show, but it's like a scene that happened on a Monday in January, and we put it together with a scene that happened in May, and we put it together in the same episode, and it looks like a ton of things happen, and the lives of the kids are very exciting, but actually it all happened over 6 months, and it's condensed. Yeah, but we don't really, we can't fabricate out of nothing, because you need...
We won't. We don't. We will just throw it away and not make the show. We won't. I mean, when there was one case of a news agency overseas being caught out because they said, "Oh, I'm reporting to you, from the scene of this disaster," and then they realized that they were just in the car park of their building, kind of, it was faked just to do that. So they got caught. So then you're in trouble because nobody will ever believe anything you do again.
Yeah, and it's really hard to fabricate. I have to say, when we are deciding which story to do, when we are pitching stories and researching, and before we decide to go in, let's say, to a different country to report, there's a lot of considerations, and it just makes my job easier if I have all the profiles, the experts I need, and the characters. It's so difficult to fabricate. We usually don't go there.
Other questions?
Yeah, I have a question. It's related tangentially, I think, to the idea of censorship and innovation or creativity. I think not just thinking about censorship, not just as there's a bogeyman or somebody behind a curtain telling you guys what to do, or self-censorship. I think we have to think about creativity in a larger context. So socially within, say, this country, it strikes me that perhaps there may be other forces or pressures at work. So for example, our students, young men and young women who may be interested in pursuing careers in broadcasting, for example, or media, I don't know if there's or do you guys feel from your own experience there's a social space for people to pursue that line, right? Or did you feel discouraged, for example, socially from your family or in education institutions or whatever, to kind of pursue other careers that may have prevented, so for example, some creative individuals from entering the field from the very beginning? Maybe just talk about your own kind of
Were you going to be a lawyer or a doctor?
Yeah.
I think all of us were, right? It's definitely not as glamorous as being in a top law firm or being in a top finance firm. I mean, most of the time I'm carrying my own camera, just like in a really unglamorous place, looking really unglamorous. But no, I never really felt inferior to someone else who decided to pursue a different career path. I think it's also about managing your own expectations, right? You can't expect to go into the media and expect to be earning like a lot of money and looking really glamorous. It's a lifestyle choice, really. But having said that, a lot of my friends who have those kinds of jobs envy what I do.
I think that it's not so much the censorship that discourages people from coming in, although people may drop off along the way, like they work for a few years and they quit if they get like disgruntled. But I think when people are coming in, probably one of the bigger barriers is the money, I think, because across the industry, it doesn't pay very well. So pretty much the only people who stay in the industry are people who love their jobs. And because it's very long hours, it's not an easy, cushy job. Yeah, so I think in that sense it attracts the right people, because the people who are there because they just want to do the job and are willing to take shit pay for that.
It's not okay. I'm the oldest of the lot here. I've been with MediaCorp for about slightly over 11 years now. I didn't choose journalism. I kind of fell into it. So my background is as a media guy. I worked my first job with at ESPN, and then I went to work with different media companies, producing, and then presenting kind of came by the way, because one day I was working on another show and my producer friend was auditioning people for a new show. He said, "Hey, come lah, I need 10 guys to audition. You just be one lah." So I get make up my quota. So I did, and I got the job. So that was kind of a fun thing. But coming into journalism, what I really like about it is that every day is different. I think we meet a lot of different people. Every week the shows look at different issues. So you learn a lot. you learn a lot, you discover a lot about different things happening. There's a real wide wealth of knowledge where I like to say I'm a jack of all trades, master of none. And every day is different. You don't get stuck behind your desk doing the same thing over and over again. Sure, it has its challenges. I mean, yes, pay is not great because it's a small market, industry small. Never mind, just marry someone who's richer. Problem solved. You know, so you can keep on doing it. I mean, it's a bit, I wouldn't classify it, you want to be an actor, a filmmaker. I think it's a little bit more challenging. I think if you're working, we're still seen as traditional media, so you still have a stable job. It's still there day to day, you still get a paycheck every month. You know, you can still survive on it. You won't be, in the US, the news anchors, it's crazy. I mean, some of them earn like, you know, $5–10 million a year. It would never happen here in Singapore. I'll make it very clear, even our most senior guys are nowhere near earning even $500,000, okay? So if you are looking for a get-rich story, then marry someone else.
Thank you. Could I pay you guys a compliment? That News Asia looks very professional. I mean, okay, it's not the same budget as CNN, but you guys look good, you really do.
Thank you.
On the other hand, the Media Corp drama production, from what I've seen, but trying to be diplomatic, that for a start, it certainly doesn't look high budget at all. There seems to be a lack of quality, that's the problem. And why is this in Singapore? I come back to my question. Because comparatively, look at Hong Kong or similar sized nations in Europe, have export drama all over the world, they have massive kind of quality productions. Why is it not here in Singapore? Well, we could. I mean, the money is there.
I don't think we can answer that. None of us are from the drama side, and to be honest, I am not familiar with the market there or how the industry
But
works.
clearly
So.
the money that is allocated goes more to you guys than to the drama.
No, I think they're very different mediums. I mean, drama is, you're making an entirely fictional show. With news, we're telling you as it is. I film a scene here as it is. I don't have to make it look nice. For a TV production, you have to make it look nice. And I think there's a lot more to it, you know. So as you would know, so I think we can't compare the two. They're entirely different.
But then the global question is, why is there not the investment in media that there is in, say, like Hong Kong?
Or maybe there is, but the market is different, I guess. I don't know how much it goes into drama. News is a different budget as well, and I think that's driven more by sponsorship and revenue from advertising. Hong Kong movies travel all over the world. I've only seen a Singapore show, one of our Chinese shows get dubbed in India, I think. So I've seen those. So, sorry, I don't think we can answer that too. Any other questions? Yeah.
About the rise of social media. So like with the rise of social media, the attention span of people has been like dropping, and I can see that in like CNN Insider, the videos are like 3 minutes long compared to half an hour or 1 hour shows that are shown on like traditional TV. So is there some kind of tension between the people who are working in the TV side compared to the social media side, because of the fact that social media might not bring in as much money as TV advertising, and also the fact that people might see traditional as the older people might see traditional longer format videos as more difficult to produce or more skillful to produce.
I'm sitting in between two TV people, so I'm trying to be as diplomatic as I can. I think when we first started out reversioning content for CNA Insider, I think naturally there was that sort of resistance from some TV producers because they were afraid that we would steal the eyeballs. So yeah, there was a bit of, being a bit protective of your own content, but I think having worked with them for a few months and getting them to understand the importance of, extending your content across different platforms has paid off because they end up seeing the results. Millions of people get to see the clips if and when they go viral. So I think that's a problem that is being resolved. In terms of monetization, I can't comment on that because that's not my job, and I don't really understand the mechanics of that either. But I'll let.
I can tell you that digital is very much the way we're moving forward, and I think that's for any industry because you have to. Yes, we used to just say, can you just show my trailer on Facebook, and then give you the 2 minutes, But we realized it doesn't work. Nobody wants to watch exactly the same thing. So what these guys do is they curate content specifically for social media. I have done a 15-minute interview, and I tell her, it's a great interview, take it. They come up with their own 3-minute version. They don't use the 5-minute version that I put on TV from the interview. So their version is different and meant to hit you online so that when you watch it, within those 3 minutes, you get the entire sense of the interview, which is what I do in 5 minutes. Same but different, because of a different platform. And that's the whole idea. So we realize that we're reaching also different viewers. As you mentioned, traditional TV is a bit passé, different people watch it. Online, everybody gets it on their phone. So they're not usually the same audience. We're finding that even though you see content online, you may not go and watch stuff on TV, and vice versa.
How long will television survive, guys?
Long enough for me to still have a job. I need about 20 years. I think.
Okay, 5 more minutes.
But I mean, talking so much about censorship and it being a deterrent to join the media, I don't think that if any of you are considering joining the media, that should be a reason for you to not join. Because, you have to work, you have to have people who want to push the boundaries. And maybe Min Min as a TV producer has faced different challenges, but I feel like at least in the digital space, people are becoming a lot more open-minded. So I had a colleague who wrote an article about the medical facilities of construction workers, and that that got quite a bit of eyeballs online. And it's that desire to want to push boundaries that will eventually get something done, So if you feel like you have a story to tell and you want to be one of these people to tell the stories, by all means come and do it. Don't let what you hear be a reason for you to not join the media.
And in fact, it's so important with people like Min Min because, again, a lot of the bosses, quite a few of them are old school in that sense. If there's no one telling them and saying, why can't we run this and fighting for that cause, they will keep on doing the same thing to every other producer who works for them. But if you can convince them otherwise to change their mind, then the next time somebody comes to say, can I do this? They'll be like, yeah, okay. Because the last time we did it, it actually worked out all right. So it is, at that point, there are levels of self-censorship, but that's the same with anywhere you go. Any industry, your boss may say, no, we're not doing this, but you're like, why? Why can't I do this? Prove to him that it can be done, and it can be done successfully. The next time, he'll let you do it.
You guys all want to push boundaries, and you think that...
No, I just want to have a job and go every day and see the kids. I'm not those are the boundary pushers, I'm the old guy.
But things are progressively changing, there is a shift.
And especially so in the digital team, because maybe in part it has to do with the bosses who are the editors who are deciding whether the content goes online or not. And the digital team, I'm glad to say that I don't think anyone's over the age of 40. So everyone's pretty progressive.
The digital team is, I would say they have more leeway to do things because even for our shows on TV, sometimes they get censored or we're told, you can't put this, but when we said, okay, can we put it online, then they said, okay, you can cut a short clip, you can include that particular shot that can't be shown on TV, it's gory or whatever, but online it's fine.
If you look at this morning's article, Josephine Teo, her article on
Wait, what did you say?
Did you read the online version and the print version?
You don't need such a big room for a site or something.
Don't need a lot of space.
So that was the online headline, but when I opened up the Straits Times, there's something like, oh, helping young couples plan families.
I think it's, we really can't control the online conversation. I think as a result, somehow the organization is giving us a lot more leeway to just be bolder, I guess, online because the people are going to get the information anyway from other sources. So there's less restriction in online articles or films. But then for TV, I don't know, for some reason, because I guess it really invades every home and sometimes it's really mundane stuff. Like I did a show about sharks and sharks that were killed and they said, we have to take out the shot. The whole story was about the sharks, and we had to take out the shots of the sharks. And the reason was because Deepavali is coming, we can't show all this before Deepavali. So I don't really understand the reasoning behind that. Or maybe there's a cultural, Deepavali thing, and I don't know. So it's a bit stricter just on TV, just because I think it really reaches out to everyone, the old and the young, and you can't really control because a 3-year-old is going to turn on the TV and they're going to watch it.
Also with CNA, we broadcast to the region, so it's all over Asia, so sometimes we have to bear in mind that there are certain, as I mentioned earlier, certain sensitivities in different countries about showing certain things. Because what does that mean? It may mean that we get kicked out of we can't broadcast in their country, which means revenue loss, which means, so the world is cyclical.
I think maybe
Sure.
as you have another event. So it remains to thank you for this very informative, productive discussion. Thanks to Tia, Shisha, and Ling for their time.
So if you have more questions, you can find us all online. Just drop us a note, and we'll happily chat with you online, as long as you're nice.
Wow.